Author Stephen Covey wrote the book 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And one of the habits is to begin with the end in mind. It's about the challenge to have dreams and visions that compel you into your future, give you a sense of destiny. And we all need that. We all need something that captivates our very souls. Leaders who finish well are able to do so. They can keep on keeping on today because they have a dream for a better tomorrow. Solomon wrote in the Bible in Proverbs 29:18 that where there is no vision, the people perish. And when he says those words, he's not talking about a dream for a nice house or a nice car. He's talking about getting a hold of God's vision, God's revelation, God's redemptive rescue plan, God's dream. And without that, people will perish. And we all need that, don't we? We need to know what is God's dream for the stuff that we're doing. And we need it because what we're doing is really hard sometimes. And if you're anything like me, in all the years I've been doing youth and children's work, probably not a month goes by when I'm not thinking about giving up or quitting. Sometimes I wake up on a Friday morning and I think, yay, it's Urban Saints tonight, I can't wait. And sometimes I wake up on a Friday morning and think, oh my goodness, it's Urban Saints tonight, how's it going to go? We all have those feelings. But what happens is that vision is the thing that helps me keep on keeping on. God has birthed something in me, a dream of seeing the lives of young people transformed, a dream of seeing them living world-changing lives for Christ, doing things that I could never dream of doing or perhaps attain. We all need that. We all need that sense of knowing this is what I'm supposed to be giving my life to. Maybe the whole of my life, or maybe this season in my life. You have to ask yourself, what enabled Joshua to put up for 40 years with a moaning, rebellious people in the wilderness? And the answer is vision, because he knew that one day he'd step into the promised land. What enabled David to keep on keeping on, running from cave to cave, fearing for his life against that mad guy Saul? It was vision. David knew that God had promised that one day he would be king. What enabled Jesus to take on the cross, scorning its shame? The writer to Hebrews in Hebrews 12 tells us it's vision. It was for the joy set before him that Jesus was able to go through all he went through on the cross. What enabled Paul to keep on keeping on when life was so tough for him? Persecution, suffering, being stoned, being imprisoned, being beaten. The answer is vision. He wasn't disobedient, he said, to the heavenly vision. Sometimes when I'm with youth leaders in gatherings, I do a little exercise with them and I say to them, imagine all bets are off. Imagine that you rock up to church one Sunday and there's this stream of people who come up to you and say, we're up for helping in the youth and children's ministry, more people than you could ever need. And the pastor of the church says, and you can do whatever you want to do in the church. And then a guy from the local council comes up and he says, and any properties we have you can use for free. And then a multimillionaire comes up to you and says, look, here's a blank check, just fill in the numbers. And then imagine Jesus himself shows up right in front of you and says, and whatever you ask for in my name, it will be done. If all those things were true, if all bets were off, then for a few minutes with the people next to you, just dream. And so for a few minutes, there's an energy and excitement, people talking and buzzing together. And then I draw them back together and they expect me to say, what did you dream about? But I don't do that because I know their dreams would be great. What I ask them is, how are you feeling now? And people say words like this, I'm feeling excited, I'm feeling pumped. I remember one guy saying, I feel like I just want to get out of this room right now. And that's what vision does. Vision is the fuel that helps us keep on keeping on. It was George Bernard Shaw who famously once said, some men see things as they are and ask why. I dream of things that never were and ask, why not? You know, I believe that now is the time for the why not people to boldly rise up and dream big dreams, God dreams that draws them into God's future. I'm not talking about being triumphant here or overzealous or being speaking of rumors of revival, but I am talking about believing in a big God who has big dreams and grabbing some of that stuff for ourselves. After all, doesn't the Bible say in Ephesians 3:20 that he is able to do immeasurably more than we can ask or even imagine? I love the story of a Sunday school teacher over 100 years ago called Kimball. And Kimball had a young boy in his youth and children's group that he really had a vision for, believing that he wanted to reach this boy for Christ and see him do great things. And through his faithfulness and commitment to this young boy, Kimball led him to Jesus and started to disciple him. This young boy grew up, and you may know him as the evangelist D.L. Moody, who led thousands upon thousands of people to faith. About 20 years after D.L. Moody came to faith through Kimball, D.L. Moody was preaching in London. And when he was in London, he captivated this crowd. And in the crowd was an English minister called F.B. Meyer. And F.B. Meyer, as he heard D.L. Moody preach the gospel, was just captivated by the call of God on his own life, a vision to do the same. And so he started to travel, and Meyer again led loads of people to Christ, many years later ending up in America and leading another guy called J. Wilbur Chapman to Jesus. J. Wilbur Chapman grew in his faith, and sometime after this he got connected to the YMCA, and an American baseball player called Billy Sunday had recently found faith, and J. Wilbur Chapman and Billy Sunday became good friends, and J. Wilbur Chapman discipled and mentored and nurtured Billy Sunday's faith until he too, Billy Sunday, went on to become a great evangelist. Some years after, he was preaching in a small town in America called Charlotte, and almost half the people in this town came to faith. The following year, those who'd come to faith organized another mission, and they invited a guy called Mordecai Ham to come and preach. Nowhere near as many people came to faith, but one of those who did was a young boy by the name of Billy Graham. And we all know the impact that Billy Graham has had, probably leading millions and millions of people to faith. But the story isn't about Billy Graham. It's about a Sunday school teacher called Kimball who had a vision for D.L. Moody and poured his life into this one boy. And because he did, the light and life of the gospel exploded from generation to generation. We have no idea of the impact of what we do today. God has a big vision. And if we're going to be leaders who finish well, then we need to have a sense of what God is calling us to. My prayer for you today is that God would envision you afresh with what you're doing wherever you are in the world, that you would know that through Him and in Him, you can do great things, not just in this generation, but for many generations to come. That is a vision worth giving your life for. God bless.